Hello, bronies! Thank you so much for coming to my talk. I'm so honored every time I get to be here. It is my third BronyCon, and I'm super in love with you guys. My name is Katia Perea. I'm a PhD in sociology from the New School for Social Research, and I study popular culture theory. And there are other academics here who are doing a study somewhat in your demographic, but before you guys came to be, I had already defended my dissertation, and I was writing about girl cartoons specifically as the form that I was using for popular culture theory to say, it's really possible to have things that are counter to the normative standards that are set up against us within the industry that exists. And an example of this is girl cartoons, and I defended it, very successful, yay, it was all philosophical theory, and after I did it, the bronies came into existence and proved what it was I had said. You guys after that. I'm not studying, this is all like, it's my pleasure trip, this one, so I don't have to talk to any, no, I mean, you know, I interview you guys this time. So I really just get to present. Yeah, it's all for school. School, proving that you can actually study anything in college, so go for it. All right, so this is about girl cartoons, playfully transgressing gender normative coding. So when you're a sociologist, you first have to define what is a girl cartoon. We're not going to talk about what is a girl because that's probably 2 hours of a presentation all on its own. So we talk about cartoon. So the cartoon, the way I refer to it is the culturally coded program of a television show. It comes on, you know, every day and you get to watch it regularly. And so then a girl cartoon is something that has a lead girl character who's under 12 years old. She's a girl, she's not a teenager, she's not an adult. And so because our cartoons are this media that's phantasmagoric, suspended disbelief lets the girl be an animal, a toaster. Who's to say she's not a girl, the little toaster? So here's a little cartoon history for you. I'm just going to read really fast. That with the advent of film, cartoons, like movies, were viewed in theaters, and then they were received praise by art critics and scholars, like philosophers were writing about them. Cartoons was an art form, which takes fragmentation and disintegration into its laws of form, making clear how constructed not only it is, but the social world, ripe for transformation. What does that mean? That the crazy stuff that happens in cartoons reminds us how crazy the world really is, and that craziness is something that we socially create. Walter Benjamin, my favorite philosopher, who sadly, the Nazis killed him, so who knows what he would have said later on about television stuff, but he wrote about Mickey Mouse and Steamboat Willie, and he said that it was a rejection of bourgeois European culture, a medium for political enlightenment and audience pleasure. So since cartoons can help us see how crazy the world is, they can also help us how to fix it. So being distributed as a mass media made cartoons readable to a vast number of people. It created a new kind of spectator, able to critically dissect cultural forms and to render intelligent judgment on them. What is that? That means when you write your blog and you discuss with one another, like, this is what I saw today, this is what it means, that's what we're actually doing. So mass media was challenging the old elite ideas of private ownership, and cartoons were for everyone, and therefore they had a wider impact on cultural standards. So where early Mickey Mouse cartoons had an expositional, even scientific function of showing diversity of the world through its avant-garde expressionism, Disney changed with its first feature film, Snow White. Her virginal, realistically drawn narrative form brought these moralistic values and sexual repression. So as Disney became naturalistic and tame, it was no longer crazy and wacky, cartoons turned into this respectable and into a regular part of the system of the norm. So while with Disney's box office success creates a new standard for the animation industry. And so once there's a norm to rebel against. And the lead rebel was Warner Brothers. So the two leading dominant creators of cartoon culture is Disney and Warner Brothers. Neither one of them is putting girls in the front. So Disney's young, demure, domesticated damsels versus Warner Brothers' mature, sarcastic, sexy dames. In feminist theory, that's called the virgin whore duality, and that's what was being presented within these two dominant camps. So while they were very different in how they presented the female form, they were very same in how they discriminated against women in the industry. They paid you very little, and even if you became a boss, you only made like $1 more than the men that you were the boss over. Wah! And like that. So in all the cartoons, there were no little girl cartoons except for Little Lulu, the master of deadpan delivery. She's wonderful, willful resilience, mischievous but well-intentioned. And the creator, Marge, said, I wanted a girl because a girl could get away with more fresh stunts that in a small boy would seem boorish. So she's already kind of leaning on like, why is it that a girl character actually means something a little special? Lulu was a success. She had a merchandising empire, all kinds of different products. Even for 15 years, she was a representative of Kleenex. And so what this meant was that it wasn't for girls. There were men, boys, women, girls. All of them were fans of the Little Lulu cartoon. So the myth, boys don't watch a girl cartoon, it wasn't from here. It wasn't from this girl cartoon. So it didn't start there. So then I wondered if there's bronies, what were those people, what would we have called Little Louis? You know, trying to figure out how we would come up with a name for them. So due to a licensing disagreement, and what that meant was that Paramount wanted to own it and not give her any money, and she's like, no, it's mine. So they were like, all right, we're gonna stop making your cartoon and make our own. And it was the carbon copy of Little Lulu, and it was Little Audrey, which wasn't as good. People didn't really like it, but what happened was both these cartoons, there was only 2 cartoons of Little Audrey that made it to television, and the Little Lulu cartoons made it to television in syndicated television, which means it's not a network run across the country at the same time. Different stations run it whenever they feel like it, so you may or may not have seen it depending where you live. And those were the only girl cartoons on early television. Because when television came to be, what happened was that it took the audiences from the theaters into the home. So when that happened, there was like, we're not gonna make any more cartoons, they're too expensive to produce, people aren't going to the theaters anymore. And the guys from Warner Brothers said that one day they had showed up to work and their bulldozers had literally bulldozed down where they would make their cartoons. Like, okay, you're done, we're no longer working for you. So the inception of television eliminated the production of theatrical cartoons. But if Disney's the dominant of film cartoons, Hanna-Barbera was the dominant of television, because what Hanna-Barbera figured out, they worked in Tom and Jerry in the theaters. They're like, we need a living, we need a paycheck. How are we gonna get them to give us money to make more cartoons? So they came up with a style that's called limited animation, and that's like, you make sound instead of drawing it out. So you hear, and now you can see the car crash, you know, and everybody's standing still, but they're running, you know, like that. And then that was called limited animation film. They figured out this is how we can make cartoons really, really cheap. The same background, just make it scroll. You're like, oh, they keep running past the same things. That's because it was cheapness. And they said when they would do their voiceover work, they would book the studio at like 4 o'clock in the morning because it was the cheapest time. They're like, we're gonna bare bones, we can do it. But by 1992, out of the 8,400 television characters that they had created, not a single one of them had been a lead girl character. And they're not bad guys, but when someone asked them, hey, why didn't you ever make a lead girl character? They're like, it honestly never occurred to us. So, you know, you have to try to think what's going on that leads to this. So then Reagan came to the presidency, bum, 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 bum. And it was terrible. It was really terrible. It continued on to be terrible when in the next Bush. So it was like, they destroyed like the public service aspect of what television had intended to be. They removed the fairness doctrine, which is that, you know, political candidates get the same time. And they eliminated the thing that said that you couldn't own too many media things yourself. So the concentration of media ownership, once they got rid of that nationwide and then later global, it went from 50 owners from 1984 to 26 owners in 1987, and down to 10 owners in 1996, down to 6 owners in 2004. Those are the 6 right there. This is very dangerous for us in a democracy. That means 6 separate groups get to decide what everyone gets to see. And so definitely that does sound like there's an intention. This is what we want, this is what we don't want, and that's what we get to have. So it's very important to see like, well, how is it then that we can actually have these moments of breaking free in our democracy, in this television that is, you know, ours. What affected children's television was that they deregulated the need for educational television, and what that did was bring us the toy-based cartoons. And since toys themselves have the binary gender code, which means half and half, you know that from computers, toy-based cartoons were then binary gendered. They weren't motivated by, let's make something for the girls. No, they were motivated for the profit of selling the toys. And so a room of one's own is an expression by Virginia Woolf to say like, hey, you need your own space. This was a room of one's own for little girls. They finally had a show that was for them. They weren't a sidekick, there wasn't a prince coming to rescue them. It was a show for girls with lead girl characters. And these toy-based cartoons created the formulaic, gender-normative parameters that define girl gender cues like rainbows and pink hearts in violence-free cooperation settings. This was now what was going to be called the girl media product. This is how that genre got created, because we always think, oh, that's just for girls, but these things actually get created at certain times in history, and this is where that came to be. So the genre is born, and along with the genre starts the discourse of discussing what is it that it means to have a girl media product. So once Little Lulu ran out of syndication, which was in 1958, there were, what is it that, no girl cartoons on television at all until Rainbow Bright. So throughout television history, the girl cartoon, hey, Rainbow Bright! So the girl cartoon characters were always like secondary. They always were the counterparts to the lead boys and men, or Johnny Quest, where there wasn't a girl in sight anywhere, you know? And that was considered to be safe by the networks. They didn't want to take a chance, and they felt that taking a chance was to make a girl cartoon, even denying that Little Lulu was so successful. So, oh, it won't make any profit. Like, but you have the proof historically that it did make a profit. So the new 80s genre set in place these parameters to identify what a girl cartoon is supposed to be. And separating the genders in product consumption, because Little Lulu didn't separate it. So these are interesting things that are getting created in the 80s when they didn't exist before. So within those formulaic gender norms that were created with those cartoon genre, the representation of an empowered girl popular culture product happens a decade before the 90s girl power. So I call it the 90s versus the 80s. Because the real beginning of girl power as a media product comes with Rainbow Bright and My Little Pony. They were inspiring young girl viewers to be like the leaders. And these really were leaders of their cartoons. Rainbow Bright appropriated the star sparkles, you know, ding, 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 and the harp glissando, which is ding. They were used by Warner Brothers to demark violence. Oh, you get hit on the head, little stars come out. And they're running ding. But now it means magic, happiness, when you see those things. And it kind of means that more than it means the violent one. So they really did take that back. And so the girl power leader, Rainbow Bright, she's sweet, she's soft-spoken, so okay, she's girly, but she's also well-respected by the colored kids. She's a resourceful leader. She always figures out how to get to what she's got to do. And she's got a bias for heroic action. What does that mean? If something needs to happen, she's like, let's go rescue them. She's always, you know, up for the challenge. And she encourages others to do the same. Girl leaders are motivational leaders. I found something then from watching all these cartoons, doing the research, was that there was a gender-based rivalry throughout it all, right? And I called them, because lack of a better term, if you come up with something good, let me know. The misogyny boys and the feminine foils. The misogyny boys were boy characters that puts down the girl characters. Like, girls can't do that. Or if they see something that's feminine, it's like, ew, gross, that's pink, that's girly. So I was calling those the misogyny boys. And the feminine foils was, like, not the lead girl, but like a secondary girl character. And she's bossy, she's snobby, she's bratty, maybe she's a little bit of a bully. So what it did was that it made the lead girl character become an other. And the feminine foil then could represent what is normal. So when you have this empowered girl character, then you could say, oh look, girls really are empowered. You're like, no, that one's a special thing, a rare thing. Like, that's not the norm. The norm is the secondary girl character. That's what girls are really like. Then you have these few exceptions, like the leader, where that's not true. Little girls rock. So these two characters, either the misogyny boys or the feminine foils, were constantly there in the girl cartoons, throughout them all, in fact. So it's like, you keep showing these like gender empowerment things, but then you have these like, almost like a little thorn in the side, like you can't quite allow it to exist. So here's an example of this. This is from Star Stealers. This is Chris. He emasculates himself and puts down girls. In one sentence, the glitter bots have everyone hypnotized but me, and that's because I run faster than anybody. The planet's in danger and you bring me a girl? You're like, this is what you call help a girl? It's the expected sexist game of boys against girls. Except that in a girl cartoon, it's the girl that comes to the rescue. And that's really significant. That dumb horse of yours can't help rescue us. He can't even fly without your color belt. Because he can think, which is more than your horse can do. That was a really good comeback. And that's, yeah, right? It's indicative of like the struggle that girls and women face when they're devalued due to not being, you know, muscular. But you prove yourself, you know, with your smarts and you're able to do stuff. So in girl cartoons, the misogyny boy is the girl's reminder of the sexism she faces in a daily life. But it's also the reminder of how she knows how to outsmart it. I was going to drop a little Adorno culture industry stuff in here for you about his references on capitalism and Donald Duck. And when he saw Donald Duck, someone saying like, when he saw Donald Duck on screen, Donald Duck is always like slapstick violence. He goes, oh, that's how the mass man must feel in capitalism, receiving, you know, this beating in capitalism. And Donald Duck is the representation that we just have to take it. I cut it out. So the 1990s then comes to happen. And what happens in the 1990s? Clinton, which you hope would be like, oh. So Clinton starts to regulate television again. And so that says, okay, you can't have a cartoon show that's just basically selling a toy. You need to have, you know, educational material for children. We're a public service. And so what that happens is that they get rid of them then. They're like, okay, we can't have any toy-based cartoons? Well, then we're not gonna make any cartoons for girls because the only reason we were making them was to sell the toys. And in fact, almost all the networks canceled their cartoons. ABC was the only one that kept cartoons. Everybody else replaced it with like wrestling. Wrestling became very popular for like kids to watch wrestling. So ABC was the only one that had it. And while women were somewhat entering these power positions in ABC, the women executive of ABC were very like anti-girl cartoon. They're like, nah, we don't even think about girls actually. And the idea was that a girl will watch the boy cartoons, but boys won't watch girl cartoons. And this is now the party mindset. It is reinforced by the binary code that was established in the 80s. And now it's entrenched in the industry. But something very interesting also happens in the 90s. The cartoon renaissance. Why? Because of the... when y'all were little, right? I was really too old. I was in college watching this in a very different way. So Geraldine Laybourne takes over Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon was the lowest rated cable station while Cy Scheider was in charge. And his slogan was, don't use a girl, you know, if you're in doubt of who to use as a representation, when in doubt, use a boy. That guy's out of there and replaced by this woman, Geraldine Laybourne, who says, you know what, the slogan for Nickelodeon should be kids rule. And we should start with cartoons. There are no good cartoons on TV. So instead of just getting cartoons from people that were just making them all at once, because like He-Man, even My Little Pony, they were made like 150 cartoons were made in a month so that you could just sell them in blocks like that. You can tell it's not really quality work. So she wanted cartoons that were made by artists that loved cartoons. And so she did. She got Doug, Rugrats, Ren and Stimpy. Ren and Stimpy. So crazy, right? And what's also very interesting about all these people is that this block of women, and this happens a lot in the artist community and cultural purveyors, people that create culture, moved around. She went from Nickelodeon to Disney. The other one went from Nickelodeon to the Disney Channel, PBS, cartoon PBS, Nickelodeon, They all kind of moved around, and so this new movement is coming from this group of people that some are moving within the culture industries. Nickelodeon, kids rule. Cartoon Network doesn't really care about kids. They care about cartoons. So all day, all night, all animation station. But where are the girl cartoons in either one of them? Because neither one of them had the lead girl, right? So 1992 is the start. 1991 is Nicktoons. 1992, Cartoon Network. And what they did was they purchased the entire library of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons and of the Warner Brother cartoons. They had been syndicated, so that meant different local TV stations had purchased those cartoons. Not everybody knew Kill the Wabbit. It was only if it was in your network, in your local TV show. So what it did was that it created a cartoon literate population, where now you could consume this media product. It's called media literacy. Suddenly, you're able to now see the entire, it's like having an encyclopedia of cartoons now at your disposal in this network. Ted Turner, he's like, why'd you do this? He goes, I like cartoons, you know? And I guess if you're a billionaire, you can go ahead and do that kind of stuff, right? And so Cartoon Network had started, their first cartoon was Space Ghost Coast to Coast, which is a really good cartoon, but there were still no girl cartoons until they make history, which is is the dawning of the new era for girl cartoons. It was so super important because they're little girl superheroes, and this really had never existed in what we define as the genre of superheroes. Why is this so super important? Because you'll notice that She-Ra is wearing a miniskirt that's practically getting her ready for the porno shoot. Wonder Woman looks like a dominatrix, and Batgirl's having like a relationship drama where he's like, "It's too dangerous for you, honey." She's like, "I'm Batgirl, you know, maybe it's too dangerous for you, Robin." So it's that didn't exist with the Powerpuff Girls. They were in kindergarten, you know. Mrs. King was their biggest problem. Like, we gotta go fight, and she was cool with it. So it was super important that they were actually little girls. And Craig McCracken, who's the creator of this cartoon, he goes like, I didn't try to be a feminist or do a girl power thing. I just thought they were cute. He's right. They are cute, and they're awesome. The 5-year-old sisters, Blossom and their aunt Buttercup, have dedicated their lives to fighting crime and the forces of evil. Da, 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 da. So this started in 1998, right? By the year 2000, the Powerpuff Girls had generated $350 million in retail sale. So what this means is that after a decade hiatus, the girl cartoon genre is reborn. And it's reborn because they figured, we can make a profit. We can make a profit. Again, not really we care about girls, but how do we make money? Okay, that's fine. Nickelodeon steps up. And even though we're all like, ugh, Dora, because backpack, you can only say that, you know, really if you're under 5 years old. But Dora is super important. For one, she's not white. She's a brown-skinned kid. And that's a super big deal, you know, for having them on television. She's Spanish bilingual. Again, how much hate do we throw in this country to people who speak Spanish when so much of our population actually does? So Dora is so super important. Her little sidekick isn't a little bunny or a little chicken, no offense to Fluffy, but it's a monkey. And in the southern hemispheres of the world, like in Asia and South America, the monkey has a very powerful mythology. The Monkey King, you know, the trickster of Africa, he's a powerful guy. And so what she does is somewhat the clear example of the natural transgression that's very playful. She doesn't ever say, oh, girls can do this too. Dora just does it. She's like, I'm just gonna jump over these crocodiles. I'm gonna save the prince. Prince Maman, I'm coming to save you. She's a pirate. Well, who's to say pirates are for boys? You know, so she's an undercover Dora. So Dora did these things, you know, just as this little girl, and everybody loved her. Little boys loved her so much that they all wanted to buy Dora the Explorer backpacks, and their parents were freaking out, so Nickelodeon was like, Diego! Boys still wanted the Dora stuff because she's so awesome for little kids. So once these two cartoons are, hey! Little girls got game. Girl cartoons now start to become regular programming. So you could actually almost start to say the counter movement begins. And just in case you don't know who these fabulous people are, that's Jade Chang, who's Jackie Chan. She's really one of my favorites. Madeline was the only one in the 90s while there were no girl cartoons, and you'll notice in her production history, she's really not, for some reason they're like, she's 1991, okay, no, 1992 to 1993, okay, 1993, okay, 1990, because they kept canceling it, because they kept thinking it wasn't important, but so many people were like, no, bring Madeline back, they kept bringing it back, they really wanted to get rid of it. Bessie Higginbottom, who's voiced by Amy Poehler, she's so amazing. Word Girl, after the Powerpuff Girls, no superheroes, so now Word Girl is the next one. Nihao Kailan, which is kind of like a carbon copy of Dora. She's super cute, she's a little drama, but you know, she's it's always crying, I noticed. And Lilo, who doesn't love Lilo, right? She's so amazing. Again, another native girl, the only non-princess girl for Disney, right? And Lilo and Stitch, when it first came out, made over $35 million in its first weekend. So it made $270 million on a global. So profit was there and clear. So Disney's like, oh, let's get up on this. But the culture industry, which is the, culture industry, it has resistance to little girl lead. So while Lilo remains the central character, she's removed from the title. So if the next one that comes out, we're just gonna call it Stitch, the movie. And in the third one, Lilo is literally crossed out of the title. Look how pissed she is. Look at her pointing at her. Why did you cross me out? Because they can't understand that maybe little boys actually really like Lilo. She likes to play with voodoo dolls. She listens to Elvis. She's amazing. She feeds a sandwich to Pug the fish because he controls the weather. She thinks tuna's an abomination, so she's somewhat supporting these vegetarians' ideas. She's a really progressive, super cool little kid. And so you can see what happens, like, can't let little girl be in charge. They don't know how to do it. So what do they do when a little girl is in charge? They're like, we'll just make it better. And so better, by the cultural standards, usually means thinner, older, maybe even sexy. Is what they try to do. Ooh. look at Rainbow Bright, right? She was like this really, honestly, kind of weird little character, but super cool. And then look at what they made her into. She's slimmer, she's definitely blonder, and she went from little girl to preteen. And it wasn't just Rainbow Bright. They kind of tried to do it with everybody. Look at, they just changed these images around to make it be like, okay, well, this is what we want little girls to be. And they really try hard to do that. This is the one that makes me the most sad because I love Inspector Gadget so much. And you can see in the original Inspector Gadget, she's wearing a normal shirt. It's not that she has a little belly, but she's like a normal body. So in the Gadget and the Gadgetinis, okay, we have to show her belly button. Why? And we're gonna make her blonder, with piercing blue eyes. So just to like enforce whiteness in the character. And what was very interesting about the original was that she, in order to, solve the crime, she had to use her computer book. This is before laptops. And her wristwatch, her communicator, before cell phones. She was a techie. And so what they did was, kind of maybe on purpose or not, but with the Gadgetinis, they did all the tech stuff. So now she's no longer the techie. They took that away from her. And to have a girl techie was kind of a really big deal. And then so finally, it's just a matter of time. Let's give her boobs. 2005. Right? Now, that's how we made her. Look how skinny she is. They're like, girl, you need to eat some rice and beans. You're anorexic. That's not okay. Poor Penny. Poor Penny. So this is the one that just happened most recently. It's very subtle, you'll notice. It's not super clear, but it's subtle enough that when you put them next to each other, it actually makes a really big difference. You're trying to sexualize these images that we are presenting to girls. And so why are you doing? Disney's like, no. She exemplifies what it means to be a Disney princess. Her inner quality, she's brave, she's passionate and confident. She remains the same, inspiring moms and daughters around the world to maybe hate themselves. Right? That's what that's inspiring them to do. New Merida, now thinner and older and sexy. What did you do to Dora? Dora the Explorer. Now she exploits the internet and goes shopping. Their quote was, older girls enjoy fashion doll play. So the new version captures girls' existing love of Dora and marries it with their love of fashion, allowing them to change Dora's hair length, her jewelry, even her eye color. Why change your eye color? Are you trying to change her ethnicity? What's wrong with brown? What's wrong with her brown eyes? Can we change her skin color too? What's going on? Poor Dora. So what's up with the culture industry? What if what we create is counterculture? I didn't draw that, and I don't know who did, because they were awesome. I can't draw even a stick figure. I take what you guys create on the internet. So thank you for creating art. So this is alternative oppositional culture. And alternative oppositional cultures is exactly what it means. It's opposing the cultures that exist, so you're an alternative. And often it's ironic by the design, right? There's a lot of irony that's involved in that, and it's resistance. So is it alternative or oppositional when the culture industry, popular culture consumption gets refunctioned? So let me sort of say that outside of academic talk. Is it a challenge? Is it saying, hey, I'm challenging you, when what exists for what's supposed to be consumed by who it's supposed to be consumed actually gets tinkered with? And that's where we are, actually. That's what we've done. Who are you guys? Every time I do this outside of here, you know, what? The bronies, what? And the other academics are saying it too. They always get like, what? Are they gay? No. They're still cool. Because I wanted to, like, it's not an insult to be gay. What's wrong with you guys? Some are, good for you, right? There's a huge trans population. The bronies don't care what anyone is, actually, as long as you're here to have a really good time. So it's like, wow, this is a very special and interesting group of people that really is representing what we consider to be democratic values in our country, and doing it in a very special, interesting way. So I had to interview you, and the main theme that continues to come up is I watch it because it makes me happy. So I'm not really sure how to continue to explain what is it that's so threatening to other people that a group of people are doing something that makes them happy. So I went around and I just started talking to you guys and asking you all kinds of questions, like, hey, who do you identify with? Which pony? Why? Why did you watch it? What are you a fan of? Why are you a fan? And just like everybody here is clearly anyone that I would encounter on the subway, you know, just like running into my general population. But what is happening on a cultural level is that the bronies are changing the way that girl cartoons are consumed. And that's the significance that I want to look at. Like, oh, what's up with cultural production consumption? So I looked at something very interesting, which was the number of people coming to these conventions. The first BronyCon had like 100 people. They met in Chinatown. Then they decided to meet again a few months later and had already gone up to 300 people. When they met again, they had 800 people, and they had to meet at the Hotel Pennsylvania. They couldn't just handle the little room they were doing anymore. And I think now there's a new movie about that. BronyCon, I didn't go to it. The next one had to move to Secaucus, New Jersey, because there wasn't any room at all. And the fire station came. And there was over 4,000 people at that convention. That's a lot of people coming from all over the country. And the last one that happened here had over 8,400 people come. That's a huge number for a convention to occur. I bet you it's going to be larger. What tends to happen with what's called cultural capital is that when groups become bigger and bigger and bigger like that, they start to get a bigger recognition and a bigger stake in how it is that they affect cultural standards. But that's not happening to the brony population. They're afraid of you. They're not taking you in. Other than, of course, the people that are writing for My Little Pony, because let's face it, you're probably a super cool person if you're creating a super cool cartoon, so they recognize us in the population, but not the main world. This is still an outside group. So cultural capital is not rising for the bronies, but the number of bronies continues to grow fantastically large. So what this means is that there's a special formula that is happening with this group. So I'm going to quote Walter Benjamin again. So he describes cartoons themselves as the rejection of bourgeois culture, right? The refunction the apparatus of popular culture production. So the smart, heroic leaders of television girl cartoons have done this by playfully transgressing the compulsive gender normative codes that are involved in popular culture product. Like, we always make girl stuff like this. What the bronies have done by refunctioning the apparatus of popular culture consumption, it's an example of the revolutionary potential from within the industry. What happens when these movements are recognized by the industry? How does the industry control and make normal again? How do they do that to you? Well, how do you make this thing that we got going on with the My Little Pony, how do we normalize it? Well, we do this. We make them older, we make them thinner, we make them sexier, right? We give them boobs, and we give them boyfriends. So formulate, that's a little joke on a meme I saw, it was hilarious. Formulaically, when the cartoon girl characters' bodies are sexualized, They're then placed into heteronormative romantic relationships with boys. In contrast, when the cartoon bodies are not sexualized, girls and boys are friends. And we all know, friendship is magic! Hey! Kind of keeping the integrity of the relationship. So what's the importance of the little girl cartoon? As soon as a girl character becomes 12, that's what they do. They do boobs and boyfriends. That's my, if you can believe it or not, I just got published using that slogan, boobs and boyfriends. And it happens at age 12, pretty systematically across all the cartoons. But My Little Pony doesn't do that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm crossing my fingers. That's what they do. They change them. So here's the little explanation of it. Subcultural groups create new social movements and the visual styles that are associated with them. You guys are doing that. What corporations do is that they appropriate these movements and the styles in order to keep current. What's cool, what's fresh? So they take. You should be what they're taking. It's the capitalist imperative. This is what capitalism does. It makes the audience into active agents and creative with meanings, like the bronies and young girls, but the market, Hasbro, doesn't allow for that meaning to further develop without first repackaging it and removing dissent. Anything that's part of that cultural movement that maybe counters the status quo and normative codes, they get rid of that, and then they're like, okay, here it is. It's like saying, oh, I used to do it when it was cool. That's because you used to do it when it was considered not normal. Now it's been watered down, and so then it gets fed back as popular culture. But something's happening, because the market... Can the market repackage brony dissent? Can the market make brony a norm? The commodification of brony identity, culture, and style continues to elude Hasbro. They don't know how to remove from you what makes you revolutionary. They don't know how to water you down. You are defiant. And I don't even... super important compared to all the movements as they exist. Is like, I don't really think any of us are doing this on purpose. It's really coming from this place of like, I'm just trying to be happy. So what it really means is that the drive to be happy is a revolutionary concept and way of life. So Hasbro doesn't know how to commodify you. Instead, since the market doesn't know how to profit off the bronies, though the cultural group, they'll recognize it's too independent, it's too individualistic to reformat it. The industry doesn't know how to manipulate the bronies. Hence, the bronies are revolutionary. And in fact, it's the bronies who are repackaging and reappropriating the market's cultural products. And then I was reading theories about cultural groups, subcultural groups that are involved in dissent. And one of the defining factors is that they reject society and they don't want to be part of it. I mean, they're still in their groups, but their group is like anti-social society, right? And that is what is, I think, a presupposed idea of what the bronies actually are, because it does make sense when you're talking about subcultural groups, but the bronies are not like that. The bronies' mantra, love and tolerance, is actively attempting to enact a new commons that's not hierarchical or exploitive. So these bronies defy the social convention and conformism simply by identifying as consumers of a popular culture media product intended to be consumed by young girls. That's why, just that one simple factor makes you this crazy group. So that is innately heretical, like a heretic. That's what makes it like that. Yet, you connect. Here you are, look how many of us are here, we're connecting. And the meetups that happen all the time, it demonstrates that we're desirous for the world. We're not like, no, I want to be alone. You know, that's not us. We're really into partying with one another. Resistance is futile, you will be pinned. So what's going on with the bronies? there's a Brony documentary on Netflix. That's a really big deal. It's a live stream and not DVD. There's Brony conventions like this one, BronyCon, and even smaller ones that happen in the United States, all over the United States. They happen in Asia, they happen in Central America, South America, Europe. It's crazy. I bet you there's like Bronies hiding in North Korea. Don't talk about it. I'm going to Cuba next year and I'm going to see if I can find some Bronies. There's Brony merchandise in stores that are nationwide, like Hot Topic. Anti-Brony bullies are making national news. This is we're being recognized even, so it's being identified, right? So have the Bronies revolutionized cartoon viewing, or is it the reverse? Are cartoons themselves the creator of the dissent? There's a synthesis that's happening. Creating culture, being created by culture. That's how culture somewhat functions. And how am I doing on time? Sir David. How much time? How much time do I have?
5 minutes.
Okay, I'm just going to talk fast. So here's my new theory. I brought it in for you guys. I'm calling it the feminine triptych. So basically what I'm looking at is that girl cartoon genre of like hearts, rainbows, and unicorns have now been joined by a new gender coding. The feminine triptych. This is my next article. The girly, the sensible, and the tomboy. It came with the Powerpuff Girls. So My Little Pony, what My Little Pony does is that it splits down into 6, right? So Blossom is Pinkie Pie and Twilight Sparkle. Bubbles is Fluttershy and Rarity, and Buttercup is Applejack and Rainbow Dash. And Steven Universe, which comes from Adventure Time, also has the feminine triptych and also does it very interestingly. So the girly, she's the femme. She's more girly than the others. She giggles a lot. She speaks in a really high voice. She can talk to squirrels. And then you have Rarity and Fluttershy go to the spa together. They're both femmes. They're both high femmes. And Rarity, she's kind of like vain, high maintenance fashionista. And Shutterfly is the shy, demure, soft-spoken. She communicates with animals. So it's somewhat like, okay, we're going to take the femme and then we'll even make it into more distinctive femme-type identities, right? Pearl from Steven Universe, she's very girly, she's very femme, and she does ballet when she does her things. Her temple room is like fastidious, you know, like very meticulously precise. And she's very protective. She's like the guardian of Steven. Very, very disciplined. But she's also like a samurai. So it's really interesting femme. Then the tomboy. And for the ponies, they'd split it up. Applejack is chivalrous and dependable, tough, handy, hardworking. Rainbow Dash is boisterous, athletic, tough, and skilled. So that's the split of like the tomboy identity. Whereas the two in Steven Universe and Powerpuff Girls are very similar to one another. They're both very butch, very tough, very assertive, very boisterous. They have a lack of personal hygiene, which is a whole episode on the Powerpuff Girls, how we needed Buttercup to take a bath. And so then it comes to the sensible one. And this one was very interesting because Blossom, Garnet, Twilight Sparkle are each identified with leadership decision making. They're the more logical and less reactionary. They're tactical and highly skilled. So as heroes, both Blossom and Garnet are very strong. Twilight is gifted with magic and is very studious. But Pinkie Pie, she's funny and silly. So why include Pinkie Pie with the sensible identity? And so I was looking at the absurdity and the connection to the identification of comedic Pinkie Pie with the same category of feminine type as Garnet, and Twilight Sparkle, and Blossom, whose femininity seems sensible, is that there's a neutrality to their objectifiable femininity, which is often addressed as the woman in the position power, right? It castrates the subjective man. That's feminist theory for you. So therefore it neutralizes the how sexual that woman can be. And Pinkie's not sensible at all, right? She's very funny. She's comedy. She's a spectacle. So like it's like Amy Poehler or Tina Fey. They're both beautiful and sexy, but because they're so funny, it somewhat makes them not be so sexy, right? So making a spectacle of oneself produces this image of unpredictable, unruly woman. Comedy is about smarts, and smarts challenges that subjective gaze. So the comic category has that same neutrality. And then I looked at female masculinity, race, and the body, and the female masculinity of tomboy pony characters was divided between Rainbow Dash as like the entertaining young jock that you date, and an Applejack was the dependable, hardworking, family-oriented person you marry. Essentially the boy and the man, right? And through the ponies, there are many, though the ponies are a lot of different colors, they're all voiced by white voice actors, with the token exception of Sakura, who's a zebra, not a pony. So perhaps she's in the colonial, in the mother country, because there's no zebras in Equestria. We once met some buffaloes in season 1, so the hooved universe is larger, but the ponies rarely leave Equestria. And when they travel to the Crystal Kingdom or Manhattan, the accents that are used there are ethnic white, like a Boston accent or a Brooklyn accent, or a European accent like fashionista photo finish. So the racial representation is subtle, but still worth noting for My Little Pony. And then the other thing I was looking at, the new thing in cartoons that I wanted to address, was the princess narrative, because I was a little bit upset when Twilight Sparks spoke, no, you're a princess, like, God, I'm a princess, again, princess. Then I came to love her, just so you know, I love her, but I was upset about it at first because it's all about the princess, because ultimately they're making this cartoon to make a profit, and so they're like, how do we make more money? Let's make her a princess, but they didn't sell her out, which I was very happy about. Because what happens is that there's this illusion of diversity. Oh, we're going to give you these different representations, but it's actually always the same. Because notice that the Equestria girls, the Brats, and Monster High, they're really all the same. You're playing with the same doll throughout it all. So what I wanted to look at was like, how is it that these two major movements, and I learned about Adventure Time from you guys. I started asking the bronies, like, what do you watch? Oh, we watch regular show, we watch Adventure Time, and I was like, oh, all the cool stuff. So obviously, you know what's going on. So I looked at how it is that these creators moved into challenges of these kinds of things. And with Adventure Time, something interesting really happens. They do have princesses, but man. I mean, look at their princesses. So you're like, oh, they're the same. Like, as they're the gender normative code. They're creating princesses. Like, This is called a reappropriation. Take back the word princess. So Adventure Time princess characters don't follow the master narrative format. It's a skewed femininity, a queer femininity, hot dog princess, slime princess, bounce house princess. So the princess demonstrates a monster beauty. It's a term used by feminist scholars to define women in the neo-burlesque scene, or women bodybuilders, or tattooed women. It's essentially women outside the categories that are of definitions of what beauty is. Monster beauty fabricates and executes an image that ultimately destabilizes the hegemony of beauty. That beauty and glamour are used to undo the same designations may seem like an unnerving paradox, but it seems that we can in fact employ pretty things, like the princess, as a tool or as a weapon to dismantle the power that those things have over us. And I think that it is because of Adventure Time, princesses and My Little Pony and the bronies, that Maleficent was even made. You know, that this movie, right? That movie, Disney undid its own cultural standard with that movie. It's really very important. So what Princess Twilight Sparkle does, we gotta go back to Twilight, is represent this traditional normative design of what a princess is supposed to look like. She's not like, monster princess. But she doesn't act in that way, in fact. She consistently challenges the stereotypes. She's brave, she's strong, she's determined, and she believes in equality and not getting any special treatment. It bothers her, in fact. She doesn't want the princess treatment. Princess Twilight is not a brat. And then who you calling princess? So for those of you that don't know, there's this really fabulous, incredibly wonderful cartoon. If anybody's here with their kids, please make them watch it. It's on Netflix. It's called Avatar: The Last Airbender. And they didn't disappoint. It doesn't have 3 seasons, it has 3 chapters. And they didn't disappoint with book 2, that again is by chapters, because when the lead boy character gets reincarnated, as happens, they reincarnated him as a girl. Legend of Korra. And I was like, but she's a teenager, so she's gonna have body. And I was like, that's okay. That's okay, because there's new, what the Legend of Korra did is give us new formations of gender representations. She's the spiritual leader that's responsible for maintaining balance in the world. That's super intense. She's trained and skilled in all the fighting techniques of element bending. She had a boyfriend, boobs and boyfriend, but she broke up with him. So she's defining the new frontier of young women cartoon characters. All this is coming. We're in a very interesting new era. Our world is getting scarier and scarier, and we're becoming more and more beautiful and wonderful as people. So cartoons are transgressive simply by not following the norm of production. So while it had been very common for a woman to voice a male character, it was super uncommon for a man to voice a female character, unless it was like a joke. But now with Bob's Burgers, it's not in a joke. It's pretty, it's set up and it's not even supposed to, you're not supposed to be laughing at it. Those really are fabulous at creating those women characters. If you haven't seen Bob's Burgers yet, I highly recommend it. That's Bobby from King of the Hill, and everybody knows Bart Simpson. I'm sure doesn't need any definitions. So then why do we need girl cartoons to even exist? So in a recent interview, writer and television producer Paul Dini complained about a worrying trend he sees in television animation and superhero shows in particular. He said the executives are spurring female viewers because they believe girls and women don't buy the show toys or really watch the cartoons. So and his quote was, the networks were like, we need boys, but we need girls right there, but just one step behind the boys. He goes, this is the network talking, one step behind the boys, not as smart as the boys, not as interesting as the boys, but we need them there, right? So, and he was complaining about this, as he should have been complaining about this. So, as we move forward by representing girl stuff, there's still this like heavy pull against it. And one of the most recent ones that upset me was the very good movie, the Lego movie, but it continued the industry notion that building toys are for boys. So they didn't even really care about representing girls. And the lead character, Wild Styles, who's a master builder, she self-deprecates all the time. She's constantly putting herself down. And she's in a bad relationship with a self-centered boyfriend that doesn't really care about her, Batman. Which Batman would never do that, by the way. He's so cool. And Selena's his only love. And Unikitty, the kitty unicorn from Cloud Cuckoo Land, right? The capital of rainbows and puppies, but she has a mental breakdown because she can't keep her smile going all the time. So the two female characters that were in the movie were represented somewhat, not so nice. And at the end, where finally the little boy gets to make up with the dad, the threat was, now your little sister gets to come in here and play. And it was like, oh no, not a little girl. That's the misogyny boy coming right out. So, is this the end of my presentation? Yes.